Adegoke, who is the Senior Program Manager, Paradigm Initiative, Amanda Obidike, NIGAC Deputy Director for Public Relations, and fellow Desmond Kocha, PhD, Senior Lecturer and Special Advisor on Digital Media and Strategic Communication, Abia State, and my humble self, Abraham Onoja, Director of Public Relations for Nigerian Global Affairs Council. Let me quickly take the citations. Amanda Obidike is a multi-award winning social innovator, technologist, and data scientist. She is the Executive Director of STEMI Makers Africa. In this role, she provides leadership, strategy management, and oversees the design and implementation of sustainable community projects and STEM education across 19 sub-Saharan countries, preparing the next generation of Africans with STEM creative skills for Africa's workforce. Forbes marked her as the African changing the cultural fabric for young talent to embrace opportunities in STEM. In addition to data science, Amanda addresses thematic topics on social innovation, youth development, entrepreneurship, and reform in education curriculum. In 2021, she became a Global 20 Goldman Sachs Fellowship winner, emerged winner in UK's foremost award, the FDM Every Woman in Technology. And in 2020, she was given the Global Award for Achievement by Tech Women 100. Top 5 female innovators in Africa by Africa Tech, Rising Star Award winner of Dita Microsoft, Female Innovator and Executive of the Year. Gold Stevie Award, Technology Rising Star Award by WOC, Michigan 30 Under 30 Inspiring Leaders of Africa, Positive Impact Award of Athena 40. In addition, she serves as a mentor in the New York Academy of Science, Cherry Blair Foundation, the 1 Million Women in Tech Global Thinkers for Women, where she lends her voice, knowledge, and serves as a role model to girls in Africa. Currently, she serves on the leadership team of the 500 Women Scientists USA and trustee board of the MAI May Foundation for Women Empowerment and Advocacy Center. Next, Desmond Onyemachi Okocha, PhD, is a social scientist with specialization in digital media, communication, knowledge management, development, communication, and journalism. He has about 15 years experience in consulting, research, and lecturing. He holds a BA degree in management from the United Kingdom, and MA and PhD in journalism and mass communication from India. Besides, working and consulting for World Bank, Global Fund for Women and Open Society Initiative for West Africa, OSIWA, funded projects. He was the pioneer National Knowledge Management and Communication Coordinator for the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD, funded livelihood improvement family enterprise in the Niger Delta. Presently, he is a senior lecturer at Department of Mass Communication, Bingham University, Nigeria, as well as a visiting associate professor of journalism and mass communication at Indus International University, India as well. He is the founder and chairman of Institute for Leadership and Development Communication, Nigeria. As an international voice, Dr. Okocha is a frequent speaker and chair in conferences across continents. In 2018, he was invited to speak at Harvard University, Vienna University, Austria, and at the MIDEC 8 International Academic Conference on Social Sciences, Lisbon, Portugal. Next, Adeboye is a leading civil society voice in the internet governance space in Africa and a proven project manager. He has background studies in politics, also philosophy and economics, a legislative engagement expert and senior program manager at Paradigm Initiative. He is an alumnus of the African School on Internet Governance with many years of global, regional, and national digital rights advocacy experience. He is also a member of the Nigerian Institute and Public Relations, once a policy analyst at the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. In addition, Adeboye led Paradigm Initiative's advocacy work on the Digital Rights and Freedom Bill in Nigeria, a bill that was passed by Nigeria's National Assembly in 2019. Wow, fantastic. I mean, first, let me give a round of applause to everyone. I mean, for our panel. I mean, it's fantastic having you all on today's session. So once again, my name is Abraham Onoja, the moderator of today's session and Director, Public Relations for the Nigerian Global Affairs Council. Quickly, before we jump into the session for today, where we'll be starting with Amanda, then next we'll take Desmond, then we'll go to Adeboye. Quickly, the Nigerian Global Affairs Council is a technology-based and digital media-driven public policy and evidence-based research think tank focused on policy concerns that revolve around governance and public administration within the Nigerian state and how we interact with the larger world. Thank you so much, everyone. So we'll go straight into today's discussion. Amanda, are you with me?
Yes.
Aha, fantastic. So good to have you today.
Thank you.
I mean, I must commend your achievements. Your profile is very rich, very rich, I would say. Congratulations once again on such very amazing and huge impact you're making, not just in Nigeria, but across the continent and the world in general. So good to have you with us, and you look amazing today.
Thank you. Thank you so
much. Thank you so much. So talk to us today. What do you have for us today regarding digital rights and data protection and internet privacy laws? Talk to me. What are your opinion on this?
Yeah, so first things first, let me say thank you so much for inviting me on board, and also to thank the Nigerian Global Affairs Council. I'm happy that we're going to be rubbing minds together. So it's not like lecture. I will just be sharing one or two statistics and, highlighting the need of democratizing data. So why I use the word data democratization is we are in a continent where we have the youngest populated population in Africa, especially in Nigeria. We have over 100 million youths. And if you look at it broadly, youth are inclined to ICT and technology, but yet we are the most deprived when it comes to digital rights, digital data governance, and data structure. Now, I'm going to say something. I'm going to share a statistics with you. I wrote it down somewhere. But let me just first let us know what data democratization means. Data democratization simply means having access to data and letting you make better decisions with that data. Now, unfortunately, we see that not happen in countries like Gabon, Nigeria, for example. We may have heard some months ago on how, the government had to ban Twitter and all. In Liberia, for example, they get to turn off their internet as at a particular time, 7 p.m., let's say 7 p.m. So that way people don't get to interact or let the outside world know. We have seen these things happen. And if you look at it broadly, there are economic implications. There was a research study that someone sent to me, and I'm going to read it out to you if you don't mind. So in short of it is, we have seen network disruptions. Governments actually clamp down on data, on digital rights of people because, it's either they want to manipulate elections or it's because of there's a protest against government policies. The next thing is to clamp down on data. Now, the economic implication or impact of this network disruption has cost a lot of money in countries like Gabon, in countries like Cote d'Ivoire, in countries like Nigeria, for example. There was a study that found out that the internet and social media clampdown that was ordered in 10 African countries between 2015 to 2017 cost an estimated value of $237 million.
That's a lot.
And let us come down to reality. Twitter, for example, we have seen how a lot of young people are very entrepreneurial in nature. They get to post their goods, their services on the internet. And I remember when we had this campaign of Keep It On Twitter, a lot of promoters complained that they were losing money. Some said that they lost contracts of 10 million or 1 million and all. I'm trying to show you how this our data rights or digital rights has become like a cultural thing when it comes to our government. But it's one thing to say we're blaming the government and another thing. It's another thing to show what the remedies. So there are proposed remedy actions that does not only concern the government, but it should concern think tank forums, it should concern communities, it should concern young people, it should also concern private sectors. Now, what I actually believe that private sectors can do is to make sure that they have or design a content moderation policies in a way that they are not showing the government that they are for them, neither are they showing the government that they are against them, but showing or standing on their principles. Unfortunately, we have seen so many private sectors, it's one thing to say you have a core value, it's another thing to really see that you are exercising it. We haven't seen that happen, unfortunately, in a country like Nigeria. Private sectors can, support initiatives that promote digital rights. They can actually learn how to start speaking out about any licensing obligation and government practices that has happened to undermine privacy and freedom of people. So that's one thing that we can look at if we want to, start tackling and addressing data democratization. Another thing that we can use in remedying it is litigation of digital rights. So we have seen, people who are clamoring for internet freedom and policies. We can start, speaking, advocating for digital rights, sensitizing people of their rights. It could be through writing articles. It could be through interpreting data and, putting it out to the public about the reality of having these data. Mind you, data is the new oil, because I use that word data is the new oil because you see that with good data, you are able to make better decisions. So you're not having or making decisions based on assumption or based on past, but based on facts. So another thing is clamoring or soliciting for digital safety and literacy, which is still boils down to this advocacy. People should understand how to communicate this, because from this, we can start writing articles. From articles, we could start bringing in statistics. From statistics, we start having credible data. And from data, we start designing or pushing forward to designing policies, sustainable policies in digital literacy. But overall, I would really want, think tanks like, NIGAC is doing amazing, but we can actually start seeing how to increase citizens' role in promoting their digital rights. Because, okay, now let me give you another example. We've seen how the internet, we've been using it for advocacy. We've been using it to speak in one voice. Remember there's a lady that died, because of she was misled because of, I think she wanted to go for an interview and someone told her to come in, and before you know it, she was slaughtered and, she was killed. Imagine if we didn't have an internet where everyone was able to know where she was and see how we can start holding the government or that boy accountable. Just imagine, irrespective of us being banned from using Twitter, people had to turn on their VPNs, they had to start tweeting, calling out, and we found out that we were able to use the social media to bring that boy to justice. So I'm just trying to tell us and let everyone understand that the impact of having data is really crucial. That's number one. And the impact of accessing this data, not being manipulated, is another one. So one, I also believe that democratization of data actually comes with trust. Not everyone right now, unfortunately, trusts the government, with their data. For example, when COVID started, NCDC, we get to see every day they bring out the number of persons with COVID and all. The numbers were jumping, and if you ask a typical Nigerian, they will tell you that number was fake. Now, why do they say that? It may be real. Those numbers may be real on the number of persons that have those COVID cases, but because of the government has one way or the other not giving people the opportunity to trust them, people would always say that's a lie. They're fabricating it. Is either they're fabricating it to get more support from government or WHO, or they're just using it to make sure that we sit down at home. A lot of things were happening, but now you don't blame people. But it's in our rights to start designing dialogue programs like this, letting people know in the grassroots on how we can be able to get authentic data to have or make better. So that's a short one, but I would really welcome anybody's question and anything from the moderator. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Amanda. You've said quite a lot, and on the questions, well, I will hold on that because I have quite a lot of questions listed. I mean, I'm impressed you have quite a lot you have spooled in terms of data and how well you have been able to juxtapose your point using those data, right? But we'll have some questions, and I can tell you we'll come back to it. Let me quickly take Desmond Okocha. I can see he's waiting for us already. He's been very active and all of that. So Desmond, you're welcome. So Amanda, give us a few minutes. We will come back to you. Few minutes. Desmond, good afternoon. Okay, can you unmute yourself if you can hear me?
Okay.
Fantastic. Good afternoon, Desmond. How are you doing?
It's my pleasure to be part of the Nigerian Institute for Global Affairs. It has always been a pleasure for me. And equality young people who are interested in reshaping the narrative within Nigeria and globally. And equally want to appreciate what Amanda has just done, giving us statistics to understand the reality on the ground. And I think probably she read my mind, because the angle she came from looking at this issue of data from what we call the digital economy. And that is what I want to speak on. And I'm going to be kind of snapshotting and speaking on a lot of issues, cluster them all together. Number one is this, that the world has shifted from what it used to be to where it is and to where the future is predicting it to be a data-based economy or world. And we need to understand that the digital economy is 1/10 of the world electricity. And one of the reasons why we feel that Africa has not plugged into a new narrative is because of the structure and the demographic configuration of our leadership. If you look at nations where the leadership is made up of young people, they've embraced this new oil that Amanda spoke of. But in our own country, generality of our leaders are of the older generation, where everything has to be physical, commodity-based, so they've been unable to migrate. So having said that, we need to understand that the present digital economy is about 15% of the global GDP. And this is a huge market. And for us to really survive, that we need to see how we can key into it. Secondly, we need to understand that the quantum in terms of the finance of the digital economy is about 11.5 trillion as of 2016. It was equally recorded as a result of the shutdown or the ban on Twitter, about 100 and something trillion was equally lost by the Nigerian economy. But the reason why it's not in the news is because the newsmakers that happen to be our fathers are not digitally inclined individuals. So you ask yourself, who are those that lost this money? They're actually the young people. If you look at the economies and the companies that are driving the world presently, out of the 10 of them, about 9 of them are data-based institutions, telecom, e-commerce, and the rest. And if you look at the richest guys on the block right now, they are all fellows in the digital world. And this tells us that Nigeria needs to key in. What is a big problem was address attitude and perception. The ruling class in Nigeria feels data empower the young folk to challenge the status quo, which as a nation, we are not used to challenging the status quo. So part of the advocacy that Amanda spoke of is for us to change our orientation, to understand that the digital world provides more opportunity beyond changing or challenging leadership. It provides economic opportunity. It provides democratic opportunity. It provides leadership opportunity. It enhances governance. It provides room for social transformation. Because, for instance, in 2018, Nigeria had about 92.3 million internet users. And this figure was expected to project to about 187.8 million internet users by 2023, just 2 years from now. And internet penetration amounted to about 47.1% of the population in 2018. But we are hoping that 2 years from now, in 2023, we're going to have about 84.5% internet penetration in Nigeria. So the question is this: if this number of persons have their digital rights protected, have their privacy protected, you can't tell, you can't really fathom the amount of economic revolution that will happen in our country. Basically, if you look at as at the beginning of the decade, the year 2000, we had just 200,000 internet users in Nigeria. But by 2019, it has risen to 111.6 million. And Nigeria today is ranked 7th in terms of countries with the highest number of internet users in the world. So having given all this background, the question is this: do we have a single law framework in Nigeria for digital rights, for data protection, and for internet laws? The answer is no. Our highest bets, there are just 2 laws or rules that we can fall back to. Number 1 is our constitution. Number 2 is what we have with the NDPR, which is actually formed by the Nigerian Data Protection Regulation from the NITDA. So these are basically all we can fall back to. So I think my interest, number 1, in this conversation is the fact that we can unlock the economy, we can unlock our potential, we can feature in the global market, we can feature in the global narrative through liberating the digital space. But we must equally be conscious of the inherent dangers therein without proper regulation and awareness. And in terms of lack of awareness and regulation brings the issue of cyber crimes and security breaches, which we talk as we move on. But I want to call on the government that liberating the digital space will provide more good to them, to the nation, than bringing laws to cramp on that digital space. Because it is no longer viable and feasible for the government to provide employment to all Nigerians. And Nigerians are willing to provide employment for themselves. But the best bet for them today and tomorrow is the digital space. So therefore, this conversation is penitent, it's vital, and it will hold the future of this country. So at this point, I'll pause, and as we proceed, and other facts and issues will unfold. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Desmond. I can see you're a big advocate of a policy guiding data protection policy in Nigeria, which is amazing. I mean, I see your standpoint, and I listed a couple of questions already for you. But in the meantime, I would say that let's quickly take Adeboye Adegoke quickly, and then we'll come back to all of the questions. So please just hang on for a few more minutes, and I can tell you that we have a lot to talk about. Meanwhile, for every other person who's joining on this conversation, please feel free to use the chat box to drop your questions, your comments, your observations, your feedback, and I can assure you that it will be directed to the person that it is meant for, and we'll get answers to those questions. So feel free to use the comment section, please, and the chat box, and drop your questions. Thank you so much. So up next, we'll be taking Adeboye. Adeboye is the Senior Program Manager for Paradigm Initiative. Are you with us today, sir?
Yes, I am. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, sir. It's so good to have you join us today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much once again, sir.
Thank you. Thanks so much for the invitation. In fact, when I saw the subject, I told myself that this is indeed a setup, because it's a lot packed in one: digital rights, data protection, and internet privacy laws. And I know that even if you have 6 hours, there's so much to be talked about.
I exhausted.
But hopefully we'll be able to at least talk about significant amount of issues, and perhaps, give everybody who has joined this call an opportunity to learn 1 or 2 things, and also for them to also see where they can come in this conversation, and also in contributing to the advocacy around the protection of digital rights, the rights to privacy and data protection in Nigeria and in the rest of the world. I'm not sure if the audience is Pan-African or if it's Nigerian, to kind of guide how to drive the conversation.
We have people who join in from different parts of the world.
Oh, okay. So try to give it some global perspective. Yeah. So let me get into it. I think Amanda gave a lot of insight, perspective in terms of the value of data, and in terms of the situation we have at the moment. And also Dr. Okocha was very helpful in identifying the gaps in the policy landscape, specifically identifying the few laws that we have, and that's talking about our constitution and the NDPR, which was issued by the Nigeria Information Technology Development Agency, that's NITA. I think I want to take it from that in terms of the regulatory lacuna that exists within the space. Whether you're looking at digital rights, whether you're looking at data protection, whether you're looking at internet privacy laws, you see a huge gap in terms of frameworks, which for me, it speaks to the level of seriousness of the political authority in terms of leveraging the gains of the digital economy. And this is not just true to Nigeria, it's true to many countries in Africa. In Africa, for example, there are just 50% of African countries have data protection laws, and even those who have it, they are not doing so well with implementation. So it's either you have a data protection law, it's on paper, but it's not being implemented, or and the way data protection laws are drafted, they usually establish a data protection authority, which is the ombudsman responsible for implementing the law. So a lot of countries have passed the law, but they've not put the ombudsman in place. Or some people have put the ombudsman in place, but they have not started operating. So you see this across the continent. It's so pathetic that despite the facts, despite the significance of data in the world that we live in, we seem not to be doing the right thing. But even look at the regional level, look at the African Union level. There is this Convention on Data Protection and Cybersecurity, fondly referred to as the Malabo Convention. You have less than 10 African countries who have ratified that, that regional treaty. So you see where the problem is. From the place of putting the right framework in place, which seems to be lagging behind. And we talk about the Digital Rights and Freedom Bill, which I was privileged to lead the advocacy for. We had the bill at the Nigerian National Assembly, and we worked on it for about 4 years. Before it got to the table of the president, we got the Senate to sign the bill, to pass the bill. We got the House of Representatives to pass the bill. But when it got to the president's table, what did the president say? The president said that the bill was too technical. He said he said it covers too many subjects, and because of that, he declined assent to it. I mean, if he had passed that bill, it would have kind of opened the way, opened the door for protection of digital rights in Nigeria, and that was unfortunately a setback for that effort. Also talking about data protection, Dr. Okocha has clearly indicated the fact that Nigeria only has the NDPR, which is a regulation that was, brought upon by, that came up by the NIDA, that's National Information Technology Development Agency. NIDA, anybody who is familiar with NIDA will know that NIDA is an agency of the federal government. Now, globally, if you look at the EU, that's the European Union, for example, the EU has something called the GDPR, that's the General Data Protection Regulation, which governs all countries under EU. And if you look at that template, what it usually does is that it creates an independent data protection authority, and the independent data protection authority will be responsible for ensuring the protection of data rights, etc. But in Nigeria, an agency of government just came up with a regulation and decided on its own to be responsible for data protection. Now, the problem with that regulation is that, number one, it was not an act of the parliament. So, they typically call those kind of regulation primary legislation, secondary legislation. An act of parliament is called a primary legislation. So ideally, what we should have had is the National Assembly, passing a law, then the president signs it, and in that way we have a primary legislation. But that is not the only thing that was missing. In fact, what I think it was even more important is government influence. You would agree with me that government is one of the biggest processor of data in the age that we live in. So you cannot be the judge and the jury at the same time. So that is what's going with the NDPR. So because of that, the NDPR is problematic, but there are efforts to ensure that there is a data protection law. There was a draft sometimes last year that stakeholders were asked to make input, but that draft has been trashed now. The federal government has put up an announcement. They are looking for consultants to come up with another draft. So there's been a lot of back and forth. And just to put it in perspective, Nigeria has been going back and forth with data protection law since 2011. And somehow we just have not been able to put, to sign any bill into law and have a data protection law in place. Let me quickly, before I stop, because I realize that a lot of people want to ask questions. As I said, these are too many topics. They cannot be effectively covered. And there are a lot of things to talk about. But let's just take a look at the internet freedom space. Internet freedom, when I say internet freedom, I'm almost saying the same thing as digital rights. If you look at the internet freedom space, there is a lot of conversations that are happening globally. Just about a week ago, there was a bidding summit that was a summit that was organized by the US president on the future of the internet. And also about 2 weeks ago, we had the Internet Governance Forum. All of these conversations, and also we had the Freedom Online Conference. All of these conversations are focused on, on the indices for internet freedom globally, because a lot of issues have risen up about how internet has become a tool both for good and for evil, and how internet is now being used to aid authoritarian governments. And so there are a lot of conversation about what does the future of the internet looks like. For example, there is what we call the Chinese model. The Chinese model is such that you have a firewall, more like sovereignty on the internet. So you be on the internet in Nigeria, for example, but you can only see content from Nigeria or content determined by the Nigerian government, which is a Chinese model. So there are a lot of people that are pushing for that, but then anybody who works or who understand the way the internet works, if you have that, you have killed the prospects, the potential, or the gains of the internet. The beauty of the internet is for the fact that it's an open space, it's a free space, and despite the fact that there are a lot of issues, it is believed that the best way to approach solving those issues is not by closing up the space, is by having conversations around how do we arrive at the best regulations, etc. And just to wrap up, let me quickly speak to the Twitter ban that happened in Nigeria. It's an example of how national governments are trying to assert their authority and control over the internet. You would notice that before the internet, it was very easy for government to control the media. All you had to do is to send trucks of military vans to their offices and shut the place down, or seize all their publication for a particular day if you don't want people to see a particular news. But that has become so difficult now, because once that information is put online, it goes everywhere, and you cannot really moderate what people can put online and etc. So government is not very comfortable with that, and it wants to find a way to assert its authority. That's why a minister of government can wake up one morning and say we are banning Twitter, which was what happened in Nigeria. This has happened in many other countries. This is not a Nigerian conversation. Many African countries, in fact, during elections in places like Zambia, Cameroon, we have witnessed internet shutdowns. In fact, in Nigeria, we're just talking about Twitter. In those places, they have seen the entire internet, shut down. In fact, as a matter of fact, Cameroon has will I say the honor or the dishonor of being the country that has shut down the internet for the longest of time. So mostly African government and government that are dictatorial in tendencies are trying to restrict that space and make it difficult. I mean, so that it makes it easier for them to be able to shape narrative around information. So you can look at information control, trying to determine what people have access to or what they don't have access to. So the conversations are many. They are not one that we can talk about in 1 hour or even in 2 hours. But I hope that perhaps when I intervene, I'll be sharing some platforms where these engagements are happening, so that for people who are very interested in, engaging in this further, they can, get those information and have the opportunity to be able to engage further. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Adeboye, for this very beautiful comment. Sorry, can the panelists turn on their video, please? Amanda, Desmond, Adeboye, if you're here, can you please turn on your video? Thank you so much. One thing is the three of you have talked about Twitter ban. Amanda talked about it, Desmond did, you are also doing same. Now, what was wrong in essence with the way the Twitter ban happened? Let me shed more light on this. During Jonathan's time, during the fuel crisis, issue, it was largely the opposition who jumped on it and turned it to a carnival in Nigeria, where the Gani Fire Park here in Lagos had lots of celebrities, lots of people who turned up. In fact, at 4 a.m. or 5:30, you see cleaners sweeping the place the next day, preparing the ground for the next, I don't know if to call it rally or protest, but it was supposed to be a protest. Twitter ban, EndSARS protest. What I'm driving at in essence is, Amanda talked about how we have a lot of young people who operate within this space and how much of economic downturn this has led to. Considering the amount that has been lost. Let me also mention, in terms of democratizing data and then having very young and youthful population who use this space, aren't we mindful of stuff like social vices? Just to say Yahoo, and then data leaks. We're talking data privacy. If you democratize the system, right, coming from a third world country where largely, to put it this way, you do not have firm control over almost anything, where people can come up, manipulate the system, and then almost get away with murder in broad daylight. Do you think we are actually really ready to actually toe the line of democratizing data in third world country? It's an open question, but I'd like to hear Amanda first. Do you think we are actually ready and prepared for this?
Okay, thank you so much, Abraham. Before I answer the question, I want to use this word, and I'm sure we must have come across it. Power intoxicates. Power intoxicates.
Thank you very much.
I've seen it very typical where you have just little responsibility and power. Before you know it, it keeps growing. And we have seen it happen in a lot of African countries. You see that most of this network disruption that happens is just because of they want to contain or control people's voices. They want to control people's freedom, which you know that the world now, the same way people clamor for human rights, that's the same way they're also clamoring for data rights, because you can't force me to believe what I don't want to believe. So we have seen that happen. Now, when we talk about data democratization, it also goes alongside data governance because it's always abused. So any organization or country who democratizes data need to have a strong governance in place to ensure that the data is carefully managed. So it also comes with training. it also comes with, driving an initiative and progress that all these things are being regulated. Let me just give you one example, even if you may not directly relate to this. So, for example, you are filling an application, and the application is asking that maybe you should have a project that is inclined to women empowerment and women's skills. Now, you are doing this application. I'm sure most of us are in the social space here where you want to feel like a grant. You first try to say, what are the problems before you now start designing what the solutions are. But you want to be guided. You go to the internet, you start typing questions on the internet, trying to see how you can get one or two surveys that can back your application. But you see that you don't see those surveys. So you see a more generalized survey. So I could say, for example, let me just use my space, STEM education, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. We don't have a clear evaluation of the need for STEM in Nigeria. So I go to the internet, I see a statistic that is related to South Africa, and I'm trying to coin that statistics into my application as a Nigerian. Now, South Africa, for one thing, and Nigeria are two different ball games. Their economy is better than Nigeria, unfortunately. Secondly, they are not as populated as us. So now I try to start manipulating figures. Now, that's also data democratization on the wrong way, because now I'm trying to fine-tune it to my own self, not minding or not trying to see how authentic or reliable it is. So I would just try to say that once we have too many people access data, it is abused and the data integrity is less. But in short of this, we cannot deny the fact that data needs to be democratized. Even if it must be controlled, it must be democratized. I have a right to my data. You should have a right to your data. You understand? But it should be well regulated.
Thank you so much, Amanda. Thank you so much. That was nice. Doctor, you want to say something before I take Mr. Adeboye? Can you unmute your microphone, please?
Yeah, you raised the issue of the NSAS protest and other pockets of protest here and there as some of the gray areas to look at. But the truth is this: those protests actually unveiled and scored our democracy not to have come of age. Before the advent of the digital space, we've had some form of democracy, and our leaders would say biggest democracy in Africa. But the truth is this: the state of the media, the state of the digital space is the biggest yardstick in the 21st century to judge the nature and the depth of democracy in a country. So this tells us that Nigeria as a nation, the leading class, they've abandoned the citizenry over the years. And the emergence of the digital space becomes a platform for the citizens to engage the leadership. So protest is not the issue. Clamorings are not the issue. These are fruits. We should go back and look at the tree and the roots of the tree to say there's a disconnect between the people and the leadership. Because it will surprise you that even beyond Nigeria, out of the 25 least connected countries in the world, 25 are in Africa. But at the same time, the pace at which internet is growing in sub-Saharan Africa is also one of the fastest in the world. So in as much as we recognize some of the negative possibilities that are coming up here and there, the truth is this, because someone put even in the comment box that if the president fails to assent to the bill and make it a law, National Assembly, the fact is this: all those in the ruling class know that the liberation, the expanding and opening of the digital space, to them, perceptionally, is not in their advantage. So they keep playing the game here and there. The president is not signing, National Assembly is not also doing what it's supposed to do. So we're going to and fro. So I think there should be an attitudinal change to understand that, number one, if we open up the space with the necessary laws, our economy will grow by 2.5% within the shortest possible time. Next, also, we need to understand that the people themselves need to know What are their rights? And the UN actually came up with a document which Nigeria equally signed into, but is yet to domesticate the document. And it details. I think I want to quickly itemize some of the rights that an average Nigerian has when it comes to the digital space. Number one, he has the right to freedom of expression and privacy on that space. Number two, he has a right to access, to create and to publish within that digital space. He has a right to use computer and other electronic devices and communication network within that space. And digital rights are actually an extension of human rights for the internet age. So we need digital governance as has been promoted and as has been echoed by Amanda. But the question is this, which is like a rhetoric. The ruling class, are they ready and willing to grant the citizens the digital rights? And the answer is no, because they only see it from the political angle. And as been mentioned, if you look at most of what we call digital authoritarianism, digital authoritarianism is an act, a process where governments try to imbibe or make laws to limit the exercise of citizens' rights on a digital space. And they only quote two things most of the time: national security. Secondly, foreign invasion. They will accuse you that one foreign company is trying to do this because in Nigeria and in Africa, national interest is contextual, it is subjective. It is what the ruling class defines it to be. So I want to summarize by saying, as far as Nigeria is concerned for today, we have not really seen the negative sides significantly of opening the digital space. So I'll pause with that.
Okay, thank you so much. I mean, this is an interesting topic, and let me take Mr. Adeboye first. Then we'll come back to this.
Yeah, thank you. So with respect to the Twitter ban, vis-a-vis the role of protest in democratic governance, etc., I think the first question you asked was what was wrong with the Twitter ban, and that's what I want to address. So interestingly, I'm currently doing a research on related to that. So, and I want to share some of the excerpts from that research. So the first thing that was wrong with that Twitter ban is that it failed the test of legality. So for example, when the government decided to ban Twitter, what law was it acting upon? Government does not rule or does not, you don't govern by your instinct, you govern by law. Doctor was making reference to where we derive our right from, and he clearly made reference to the Constitution. So that's where we derive our right to freedom of expression for example. While the Constitution also have provisions that derogate from such rights in section 45. But there are clear definitions or clear explanation of basis for such derogation. And when that derogation are going to happen, steps that needs to be taken. So the first thing that was not taken into consideration was legality. There was no law, there was not even a regulation that was put in place to say government has the power or government can suspend Twitter at a particular point in time. Another thing is proportionality. So even if government has had legitimate concern with respect to Twitter, the action it has taken, is it proportionate to the problem or the challenges or the issue it has with Twitter? For example, we all know why the government suspended Twitter, although it has failed to admit that was why. It has been, government has not manned up enough to be able to say this is why we suspended Twitter. It has been given all sorts of excuses. They suspended Twitter because they took down a particular tweet of Mr. President, right? Even if the reasons that Mr. Lai Mohammed has been given, if it was correct, he has been saying that Twitter was being used to promote whatever violence or, activities capable of bringing Nigeria, that's such a vague, excuse. when you now decide to take down the entire platform, irrespective of what other citizens are using it for, a lot of citizens use that platform for their livelihood. So let's put civic participation on one side, right? A lot of citizens use that platform for their livelihood. A lot of people literally live on bringing their product, advertising it on that platform, and meeting their customers and potential customers on that platform. But all of that didn't matter. You shut down the entire platform. So that tells you that that decision was not proportionate. And these are international standards from derogation from human rights. Nigeria is a party to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. The African Commission, we're a party to that too. So both international law and even our own law, the government totally violated those laws in taking that decision. So a lot of people have asked what is wrong, and there have been a lot of argument back and forth. And a lot of people, unfortunately, we all intelligently tell you that, oh, government has power to derogate from constitutionally provided right. But what they don't tell you is that there are clearly laid down principles on how to go about the exercise of that right, or or that discretion. It is not just something that somebody will wake up one morning and say, oh, we are taking this platform down, or we are doing this, or we are doing that. So that is what is wrong with the suspension of Twitter. It is not about whether Twitter is a perfect space. It's not about whether Twitter is a perfect platform. It's about government acting illegally and disproportionately, and that's everything that is wrong with it. And also, we also know, any honest person know that it was about the ego of the Mr. President. It was strictly about his ego. They took down his tweet and he wasn't happy about it. And some people got angry and they decided to do that. And that also shows you everything that is wrong with governance in Africa. The fact that the ego of one person is more important than the economic interest or the right of hundreds of millions of citizens. It tells you everything that is wrong with the country. So let me keep it at that. I think Amanda and Doctor had fully addressed all the other issues.
Okay, fantastic. Let me quickly dive into the chat box and read out some few comments there and all of that. So Buhari Mohammed is saying, insightful, great to be here. Some time back, when DSS wanted to monitor WhatsApp chats of the citizens, assuming it was possible, is that not a breach of privacy? That's one question. Secondly, Timothy Tion is saying, India loves internet shutdown. States impose over 500 connectivity blackouts in 10 years. Okay, then Team N is saying, thanks for your time, Adeboye. Concerning the data and digital privacy bill you advocated for, which the Senate passed, but the president declined to sign into. One, how long ago was it that the president declined assent? That is one. Secondly, if the president declined to sign a bill into law for 90 days, the legislature is mandated to veto the president's decision and sign the bill into law themselves. Have they done that? That is secondly. Thirdly, alternatively, if the president sent the bill back to the assembly for adjustment, please, what's the current status of the bill before the assembly? Thanks, team. One below. Okay, so also in the chat box, Team N is still saying to Adeboye now, a capitalist country like the US has data and digital privacy laws. If Nigeria opens up the digital space, more and private digital-based companies come into play more. Don't we fall into the trap where such companies will become so big that they can take any possible data and privacy law for granted, just as we see currently happening in the US vis-a-vis Facebook, Google, which was what I was talking about earlier. Thanks, Timothy. Wow, below. So these are a few questions. I mean, I talked about this other one partly where I was talking about data leaks, social vices, amongst others, but I can see that he has been able to put this into perspective again by asking. So, I mean, I think those questions were directed to you. So, do you want to share maybe answers or something?
That's fine. Let me respond directly to those questions. The first one was asking about the digital rights bill. Yeah, so This was not 2019. The bill, the president declined assent specifically March 2019, and you would agree with me that that was just few months to the expiration of that, that first tenure of the government. So the options that were on the table were not many. You were right when you said that if after 90 days doesn't assent, the National Assembly can override and all of that. But then, in advocacy, you have to explore your options and also understand the political climate. So even though the National Assembly, both Senate and House of Rep, they passed that bill, it didn't mean that they were vested that much in the bill to the extent of overriding the president's veto. You have to understand that. The fact that we got them to pass the bill wasn't because it's so much. In fact, even we were telling ourselves at the time that we're not sure that they understood what they were passing, because the bill practically gives power to the citizens, practically asserts the right of citizens to use the internet, the right to privacy on the internet, right to freedom from surveillance, etc. That's what the bill does. So we were like, I'm not sure this guy knew what they were doing. So it wasn't an advocacy option at that time to say, let's take it back to the National Assembly and get them to override the president's veto. I also know the way the political system in this country is like. The president is too powerful. The executive president is so powerful that a lot of decisions that are being made on the floor of the House are made out of sentiment of not being in the bad book of the president, not in terms of national interest, of the interest of the priority of the common man. So that said, so the options we had was to go back and look at the reasons that the president gave and say, how do we navigate those reasons and convince him to sign the laws? So what we did immediately, that we convened a stakeholder meetings, got people in government and people outside of government to sit at the table and look at the bill and kind of agree on what is most important and what is most problematic. One of the reasons that the president gave was that the bill was too technical and that it covered too many subjects. So let me clarify that. That bill will have addressed two issues. It will have addressed digital rights and it will have addressed data protection. As at that time, Nigeria also had a data protection bill at the National Assembly. So we thought, okay, since there is another bill on data protection, let's reduce the bill to address just digital rights, which at that time was interpreted as human rights on the internet. So issues around your ability to express yourself online, issues around your privacy online, or if you like internet privacy, issue around freedom from surveillance, etc. So the bill was redrafted on that basis, and after it was redrafted, by the time it was redrafted, of course, that administration came to an end. So there was a new National Assembly, and we had to then start the process all over again. So the bill has gone to the National Assembly and has been read once, right? So it has passed through first reading at National Assembly, but then it has to go through second reading and third reading before it's sent back to the president. But you and I know that if that bill goes to the president's table today, there is no guarantee that it will be signed. The only advocacy chance that seems to be available is the fact that elections are coming, and government likes to look good during elections. So we're also calculating that, okay, maybe we should target that and see whether if we push it around that time, we'll be able to convince him to sign it because of trying to look good in the eyes of them. But then again, it's not going to be on the ballot, so we might not have anything to lose at the end of the day. So it's very complicated when you are doing advocacy for a new law, for a legislation, usually a law that is about the interest of the public and not about the interest of a few ruling class. So that is about the bill. Then let me answer the second question, which was talking about, corporations becoming too big to the point of, going out of control. Just to be clear, Nigeria is already in that place. And I'm going to explain to you why it is so. So I think the US example that you give might not be totally accurate. I think the US is playing the global politics because the US understands that this company, though they are US company, but they have global influence. Now, if the US is too hard on this company, it is easier for other countries in the world to go hard against those countries. So the US cannot kill its own company because of that kind of private interest. So the US, from the perspective of global diplomacy, is doing a lot to protect those companies that have become global corporations and with massive influence across the world. They're doing everything to protect them. So that's why you see that even despite the fact that they flout law sometimes and they just kind of give them a pat in the back without really punishing them. But we also agree that there are a lot of measures that have been taken globally, even including the US, whether to fine or to punish many of those countries. Many of them are fined significantly, millions of dollars fine many times, whether in the EU or in the US. But in Nigeria, the problem is even bigger. We talked earlier about the fact that there is something called the NDPR that was brought up by NIDA. which is an agency of government. Now, what that agency of government has done successfully is that if anybody has done anything in terms of violating the right to the right to privacy or data protection, etc., that agency, it depends on who is the violator. So if the violator is a small or medium agency or enterprise, they get to be fined, they get to be bullied, they get to be punished. But if it's one of the big players, I mean, they just have conversations among themselves, or at worst, they release a press statement and say, oh, so we have done this, and nothing happens. So what is essentially happening in Nigeria right now is that data protection issue has been totally turned to a subject of who knows who. It has turned to a subject of it depends on who you are. That's what determines whether you get punished for violations or not. You don't get punished for violations if you are a friend of the government, if you're an agency of the government. And I always like to emphasize this point, that you cannot have data protection conversation without talking about the independency of the institution or agency that is responsible for enforcing data protection. Because government is a data custodian. The government is a massive data custodian. In Nigeria today, they are talking about digital identification. Over 60 million Nigeria have been registered on the digital identity database. That's a lot of data. In the CBN, you have what we call the BVN numbers, right? For you to hold a telephone, you have to do your SIM card registration. They are collecting a lot of data. But the same government still want to regulate, still want to determine what punishment somebody gets for violating data protection rights. You see where the problem is? The judge, the jury at the same time. So you are the one. So you are a potential violator, but you're also the one that will determine what punishment you get. So what we have seen is that there will be no consequences for actions of government, but private organization, all these young people who are coming up with innovations that has to do with it, they are the ones that get punished. And that takes me back to the earlier point by Amanda in terms of the significance and importance of democratization of data. To properly democratize data and the way data is used, we need an open space. We need a proper regulatory framework that defines roles, that defines how to use data, that determines what is called legitimate use, because data is good. Data can solve a lot of problems. Data can.
Sorry, let me cut you. Let me cut you. You mentioned that US was being careful how they addressed issues regarding Facebook and all of that, simply because they are trying to maintain this global diplomacy, right? Where they're trying to still be seen as the global player, they are in charge, so they go back and then have discussions around those issues behind the closed doors, and I mean, have drinks and sort it out, however way they feel is okay to them. It takes me back to sorry I interrupted, and it goes back to what I was saying. If a nation like US and a company as big as Meta will do this, as developed and as advanced as they are, let's step back to Africa, third world country or developing nation, having friends of this sort within the system. Recently, the former DG for the Statistician General, also National Bureau of Statistics, the one who retired recently, said the only reason why they did not reconfirm him was because government put a lot of pressure on him to fabricate data and all of that, and then he wasn't doing all of that. So obviously he knew he was not going to be reappointed and all of that. If you had a country like ours, how can we, no matter who they are, I mean, this is even a government agency, and then you have companies or a Twitter that they cannot control. How do you expect a company of that sort or an institution of that sort, as it is becoming, to thrive in developing country like Africa? This is more like what I was trying to ask. How do you think a country or countries that are trying so hard to control who gets what, when and how, at all costs, by all means, to allow an independent institution, allow Amanda to speak freely, allow Adeboye to come online and say what he wants, allow Abraham to come and rant whatever he wants to rant, form cliques and caucuses and all of that to try to influence government decision or to come and buy and sell. And in doing that, I mean, they are trying to form a protest against government decisions or government actions and inactions. That is on one hand. part of the concerns of the government was you deleted the tweet of the president. Nnamdi Kanu was freely posting everything and anything on that same platform. You did not take it down. He was there. It goes back to what I was saying. Is this for the government or against the government? Which was part of the reasons why I mentioned the protest and the carnival that took place during Jonathan's first subsidy period and then the EndSARS protest period, where Twitter was on fire. You see, these are two scenarios I was trying to bring to light to say, okay, was he right or wrong?
I
So
totally
do you
get
understand what I'm saying right now?
I totally get your point, and let me clarify. I will start from where you started from. So the point I was making about the US government and global diplomacy is to the extent that, given that the likes of Google, Facebook are US companies, the US government will not want to kill those companies. So even in regulating them, they do it with a lot of consideration of the fact that this company represents our interests wherever they are in the world. However, the way to regulate anything or any organizations like that is to set the rule of engagement. If you recall, when I was answering the question, what was wrong with Twitter ban, I said it failed the test of legality. The point is that what is the rule of engagement for having Twitter in Nigeria? That is the point that we are missing. For example, EU has fined Meta or Facebook, whatever you call them, many times. But on what basis did EU find them? Did EU just wake up one morning and say, this guy deleted something we didn't like, then you find them? No, there are rules that they have set, and it is on basis of those rules.
Of
so
those rules that they are fine.
Rule,
okay.
Then you are fine. So even you know exactly what law you have violated.
Okay.
It's a big
so it
difference.
Keeps everybody in check, basically.
It keeps everybody in
keeps
check.
Me, the government in check.
Exactly.
It keeps you in check.
Exactly. There's a rule of engagement for everybody. So when somebody has violated that rule, it's clear to everyone. For example, you
know the consequences and the punishments attached to it.
We find MTN, for example. Why were we able to find MTN? Because NCC set up a regulation. NCC is the regulator of the the telecom space. And they set up rules, and MTN went against those rules. And on the basis of that, the government of Nigeria was able to fine MTN on that basis. Now, that is how you run the country. You don't run the country by how you feel about the situation. You create rules.
You wake up one morning and do something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what was wrong. You talk about the protests and everything. The truth of the matter is that Twitter is a platform. And let me quickly, clarify something as well. When you talk about the government saying that people like Nnamdi Kanu were there on Twitter and Twitter never took down their tweet, it's a very simple thing. All those platforms like Twitter, like Meta, like Instagram, etc., they also have rules that they call guideline, whatever name they call it. In their guideline, they set clear rules in terms of how people should use those platforms. And when people don't use that platform the way they have set it out, what needs to be done. Now, with respect to the tweet of the Nigerian government, of the Nigerian president that was deleted, it was because a lot of Nigerians reported that tweet. Now, that's how it works. When the content is put online and people flag that content and say this thing is promoting hate speech, when you report to the platform look at it, assess it vis-a-vis their own rule. If they find that truly it has violated their rules, they take that content down or take whatever action that has been listed in that rule. Now, if this platform know how to work by their rule, what stops us or what stops a whole nation or a country or a government from having laws in place that defines how to engage in many of those platforms? Now, the problem we have is that it's not as if the government of Nigeria has not tried to put laws in place, but the laws that the government of Nigeria has tried to put in place are laws that will totally take away the right of Nigerians to use those platforms. So there's this bill called the Protection from Internet Falsehood Bill that people, it has a short name of social media law. Now, if you look at the content of those laws, they strictly just take away your power to even express yourself or your opinion online, and it gives the absolute power to determine what is truth and false to the government. So that's where the problem is. in order to come up with the rules of engagement in terms of how to use some of those platforms, there is a lot of multi-stakeholder engagement that needs to happen. That is how you set rules globally. That is how you determine or you come up with laws that can, you can use to regulate that platform without creating problem of taking away the rights of the people. And finally, from me, because I realize that other people want to speak as well.
Yes, there are a lot of questions coming up as well.
Yes. So finally, from me, in terms of the challenges that Nigeria had with respect to protests, etc., and all of that, protest is legitimate. That is, the right to protest is even in the Constitution. So you cannot take away that right from the people. And platforms, if the Constitution also encourage different platforms for people to express themselves, which will make Twitter fit into that type of platform as well. But what we need to realize is that it takes a lot of genuine commitment on the part of government to recognize the rights of the people for it to be able to even come up with the right type of regulation in the internet space. There is a lot of gaps that are existing in the regulatory space, but in order to fix those gaps, there is a lot of work that needs to happen, not just by government, but between government and the private, because you cannot regulate the internet without involving the stakeholders. The private sector is a huge stakeholder. When you talk about internet governance, the UN model for internet governance is a multi-stakeholder model, and that's what brought about the Internet Governance Forum. It's a multi-stakeholder process, and that is what we need to do at the national level as well, to create a multi-stakeholder system whereby we come up with the right laws, policy that defines rules of engagement on the internet. It's not as difficult as we are making it to look like, but just because what the government is seeking is not regulation, it is control. It is ability to determine what is true and what is false, or who goes to jail for saying what, or who goes to jail for violating which right. And that is not compatible with democratic governance.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you so much, Adeboye. That was quite insightful. Thank you so much. Quickly, we'll take Amanda. Amanda will be responding to Buhari Muhammad's question, saying sometime back when DSS wanted to monitor WhatsApp chats of the citizens, assuming it was possible. Yes, assuming it was possible, is that not a breach of privacy? Amanda, can you unmute your microphone?
Okay, sorry about that.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yes. If assuming that happened, that's very, very wrong. And in all clarity, it's not legal. So I'll give you an example of something that happened in the USA in 2017. There was a Texan shooter where the FBI wanted to access his iPhone, and they took it to iPhone, and iPhone clearly did not want to bypass the access code. They didn't want to unlock this phone. Now, if you look at it, this person is a terrorist, if you look at it that way. Apple on its own part should give the FBI every support it needs in terms of unlocking that phone where they can access the cloud. But iPhone owed, let me not say iPhone, Apple owed the user, whether he's a terrorist, whether he's a thief, whatever he is, they owe him that allegiance, because once you have that phone, they are giving you their word that they're going to protect your data and all. The reason I'm saying this is, it's wrong if the DSS attempted that. Hopefully and thankfully they did not. That's why on one part, there is a great role that the private sector should play. For example, they can issue periodic reports on government shutdowns. They can demand for users' data and request for interceptions of communication. Let me give you an example. Largest telecommunication houses like MTN and Airtel, unfortunately, today they do not issue transparency reports with any information. And these reports that are issued are meant to be given to the public, where this public would have an idea. So why I'm saying this is contributing to what Adedayo said in terms of independence of regulatory bodies. Not just only regulatory bodies, but private sectors whereby you should be able to protect the citizens, because in as much as the government has this data or can easily access it, the private sector, the regulatory bodies should also know that they are working on behalf of the public. So in response to your question, it's wrong if the DSS should have access to user privacy.
Thank you very, very much, Amanda. And I think Buhari Muhammad would have gotten that. Thank you so much, everyone. We're 17 minutes past the time already, and I think at this point we will be wrapping up. So, in a nutshell, I'd like to say thank you to everyone for joining. I bet I have learned a lot today, and I guess we all have. So, it's been amazing speaking with our panelists, getting questions, getting insights, getting comments as to what is going on within the digital space, the rights, the protection, and the privacy laws. So I think it's been amazing session today with our panelists. We're speaking with Adeboye Adegoke, Amanda Obidike, Desmond Okocha, and my humble self. So thank you so much, everyone. Once again, this was put together by the Nigerian Global Affairs Council. And if in case you joined, in the middle of the conversation, the Nigerian Global Affairs Council is a technology-based and digital media-driven public policy and evidence-based research think tank that's focused on policy concerns that revolve around governance and public administration within the Nigerian state and how we interact with the larger world. Thank you so much, everyone. This is the last policy session for the year. It's been amazing hosting you all to this very interactive session. On behalf of the council, we say thank you so much, and we look forward to hosting you in the next year to more interactive discussions, more insights, and then where we get to learn and constructively criticize or recommend alternatives to the government as to how best to govern the nation. I mean, it's a collective effort. So once again, thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you so much to you, our viewers and our listeners from all over the world. As we wrap up, we say thank you so much, and we look forward to hosting you in the next FY. So for now, we'll take the national anthem as we wrap up once again. Thank you so much, everyone, and bye for now. Together we build a sustainable nation we can all be proud of. Thank you so much, Soji. Thank you so much, everyone, once again, and have a nice day ahead. Thank you so much, and bye for now.